Welcome to another episode of This Was Supposed to Be Easy.
We've had these conversations on at least 1,000 car rides and thought it might be time for other people to join us. This is Cheryl.
And my name is Amy. And today we are going to be talking about where you can go to make friends. So this whole conversation is kind of coming about because of a previous conversation I had with a friend, and they were saying that they wanted to make more friends. And we were kind of brainstorming ideas of what they could do. And it really got me thinking about this quote that I saw. And it was a Tony Robbins quote. And it's that change nothing and nothing changes. And the reason that that felt pretty poignant is because our days are pretty routine. I know at least mine is. I wake up at anywhere between 5:30, 6:15. I get, my kids up, get them off to school, that kind of stuff. And then I sit down in my home and I'm doing work, I'm doing schoolwork, and my day is kind of the same. And then in the evenings after the kids get home, I cook dinner, I take them to their events. I have some phone calls kind of throughout the day, things like that. But the new people I engage with on a daily basis is pretty minimal. And it made me think about the way to meet new people is by kind of changing up that routine of the day to day. And so through this conversation that I was having before, we were kind of brainstorming what can you do to change up the everyday to put yourself in the pathway of new people and meeting new people. And I thought that was something that might be interesting for you and I to talk about, Cheryl.
I love it. And I'm not going to lie, you do sometimes share quotes with me. And actually, after we had an episode where we talked about being outdoorsy versus outsidey, I found a sign that was perfect for you, except it was the wrong word. I think it was, the outdoorsy version instead. But in that, you have shared a few quotes with me about this that really got me thinking as well. Especially because you and I grew a friendship after knowing each other for a very long time, right?
Mhm.
And, then it was pushed to a new level when Holly needed to talk to people on the regular during the pandemic. Anyway, circling back to some of those quotes that I think relate also, but maybe in a little different way, is one that you shared from me from Steve Jobs. The only way to do great work is to love what you do. I wanted to share kind of that. I don't know if it's counter to the Tony Robbins one that you shared, or actually maybe complementary, right? Is a better word, because a lot of people that are listening to this podcast, and maybe a lot of people that you and I engage with, Amy, talk about the fact that they have had friends in different phases of life, but they're feeling at a loss right now. Like they're in a new phase of life, a new era of life. Something has changed that has maybe removed them a step or more away from the closeness that they felt with other people in the past, and they're stuck, right? They're like, I don't know. I'm not quite sure what to do to get back to that place of having new friends. So your quote is perfect for that, right? Like the Tony Robbins, change nothing and nothing changes. Sometimes it's the life around us that changes. And if we just keep moving along, it's different for us. And we have to figure out what we have to change, right? To move along with it. If that even makes sense. But I think that
Yes.
brings us to why we felt we needed to have a conversation about some specific steps that we could take, right?
Yes, I think that, talking about quotes. So I have graduated from only watching TED Talks now to master classes as well.
I love
And
it.
and so I very much have been enjoying, and I was watching this one master class, and it was a business finance class actually, but one of the kind of ideas that came from it was you can make a wish. You can, put a hope or a dream out there, but it's not an actionable plan. And I think a lot of times we say, oh, I wish I could meet more people. I wish I could do these things. and we speak it out into the universe, which is great. But what does it mean to then take that wish and then build it into something tangible? A place that you could go, a situation that you could do, a hobby you could create, or any of those types of things where then you're making the plan based off of the wish that physically leads you to the outcome that you desire. So instead of just speaking and manifesting and saying those things, which are all great, it's a perfect place to start. It's not the ending point. It's
Yeah.
then saying now, okay, I've spoke it out into the world. This is what I know I want. Now I'm going to do the next step.
Yeah. What are you going to do about it? Right? I love it. And you and I have had this conversation before. Like, is Cheryl an extroverted introvert or an introverted extrovert? And so sometimes it's really hard for me to think about doing something new because it's a little uncomfortable, or taking something I love and doing it in a place where I might have to engage with people I don't know. Right? That can sort of make me nervous. Does it make you nervous, Amy?
It does make me nervous because we've spoken this word a million times in these conversations, and that's vulnerable. We're being vulnerable, going into a new place, having new conversations. And in fact, being vulnerable, though, I think opens you up to that possibility of something different happening. And so, as we're talking about this, it does lead me to a specific part. So, I think when we go places and we try new things, we want to take our support people with us.
Mhm.
And that leads then to kind of the repeat. So even though it might be your best buddy and you feel safe with them, for example, let's say you're going to go to a cooking class. Let's say you sign up for a cooking class. You say, "Hey, I want to do this. I want to learn how to make pasta. We're going to go to this cooking class. Do you want to come with me?" And I would actually encourage you, if you're going to sign up for something new, try doing it on your own. Because then when you're doing it on your own and you're a little bit uncomfortable, you're looking to the other people in the class to talk to versus turning inward to your friend that you always talk to, because that's doing more of the same thing. Now, you might go to that class and have the best time imaginable, but it's not putting you in meeting other new people.
I have to piggyback on what you just shared because I literally broke out into a sweat as you were saying that. Like, come on, come on. I need one person to go with me. But you know what it made me think is, yes, being brave and trying something on your own. And I do have a couple of samples or experiences where I've tried that, but also asking the question, if I really, really, really do need someone to go with me to make it actually happen, right? Who is the best person to go with me, right? So if you were going to go try something new and you asked Cheryl to come with you, Cheryl is going to be nervous about all the new people, and so I'm going to like spend a lot of time looking at you and talking to you, and I might suck you into that more private experience where you're with a group, but you're experiencing it just with that friend you brought along. But I literally, so right now I'm binging, and don't laugh at me, but Kevin and I are binging the show Superman and Lois, which I think we're on season 3 now. And these kids that are in high school, the kids of Superman and Lois, and some of the other kids in town went to a party in Metropolis, and the two girls that were sitting side by side, were talking, and one of the girls noticed this guy across the room looking at her friend, and she said, "He's looking at you," and she's like, "Oh, what do I do?" And her friend popped up, walk across the room, said to the guy, "Hey, my friend over there is named so and so. Let's go meet her," and dragged him over and introduced the two of them to each other, and then walked away. And I was like, well, so in some cases that might be the perfect friend, right? Because they're like a connector. They're ready to open the conversation up with anybody who's in the room and do some connecting. So, I tell that story just because I'm with you, Amy. You definitely need to make sure you don't have too much of a crutch with you. But if you do just need that to get out the door, try to invite a friend who's going to connect you, not suck you back.
I love that idea. Yeah, I'm even thinking of friends that I have that literally will talk to anyone and, are the ones to kind of be that connector in order to make an uncomfortable situation feel more comfortable because they do talk to anybody. And so then instead of having to be vulnerable and say like, "Hi, I'm Amy," they've already done it. "This is my friend Amy." And then even if they are still part of the conversation, they open the door to make it a bigger conversation versus just then like you standing on the sidelines, while they have a conversation.
Yeah, exactly. So let's talk about where those places could be or what those activities could be. I'm wondering, Amy, if between the two of us, we could brainstorm a few ideas and or examples, and then hey, at the end of the episode we invite anybody who's listening to hop into the chat and add more to this brainstorm that we're starting right here. So, as we prepared for this conversation, Amy, did you think of any places that might fit the bill for being potential new friend locations?
I did. So we have spoken about our own creativities, and I know I've spoken about my need to be creative. So I love and have taken in the past different art classes, different types of painting. I've done like one off classes where it's like, oh, I'm going to just do acrylic paint for the afternoon. I've also signed up for classes where I'm going to do, watercolors over the next 3 months or something like that. Both bring about different opportunities, obviously, but I also recognize that not every person who listens, here today is ready to jump on the painting bandwagon, so to speak. So they would be more inclined maybe to do a cooking class, or they might be, and I know I kind of go to the classes type of thing, but just because those are opportunities to actually talk. One of my favorite things to do by myself that I've mentioned before is go to the movies, but going to the movies by myself doesn't really open up the opportunity to me to talk with other people there. So it has to be kind of a social event
Right.
in addition.
Like, when you say that movie example, I think of my daughter and, her love of shows, but going to a show is a very you can sit down in your seat and then you're quiet and you're listening to the show. However, she has fully embraced the idea that I love shows, that you love shows, that my friend Jodelle and her daughter Jessa love shows. Sometimes Holly goes with us, sometimes Amanda goes with us. So for her, I think now we've given her the gift of expanding her social network to maybe some older ladies that, she might not necessarily hang out with, but it's taken that opportunity of a passion and interest in Broadway shows, much like movies. And while we're not talking to each other during the show, we ride together on the way there and we eat together. And there might be other opportunities to connect with people who have a passion like that. Amy, when you talked about taking classes, like your painting classes and things like that, how did you find them?
So I always find it's a great thing just to go on Google or something and put in, classes near me. Uh, Local community colleges can be a wonderful opportunity to look at like what they have for community engagement. A lot of community colleges kind of reach out and do some of their classes that they offer for credit. They might offer them to just community people.
You're totally right. Like, I live up north in Northern Michigan, and our local community college in Petoskey regularly offers community-based classes or workshops that look really interesting to me. Like I think they've done wine tasting and foraging for mushrooms and all kinds of things like that. I hadn't thought about that as an opportunity. So I'm glad I asked you where you find them. Sorry I interrupted you too, but, all of a
That's
sudden I was like, "Wait, I could do
No,
that."
no, that and those 2 are perfect examples of classes where it's not necessarily having to do art, right? Because I think so many times as adults, we think, "Oh, I'm gonna take a class in But, like one class I really am desperate to take is I really want to do glass blowing. Like that's kind of my next thing that I'm like, I really want to take a class. So I'm going to do that. I want to, even though I am totally fearful of like being burned and all those things, I will take a glass blowing class. It is on my list to do.
I do remember you suggesting that as a possibility for our holiday book club gathering, and I was maybe a little disappointed that we didn't do it. So if you do it and you don't have to go alone to make yourself make friends, I might be inviting myself.
Perfect. I will gladly sign you up with me. Well, and I know there are listeners out there that might be also saying, "Oh my gosh, these all sound great, but they all cost money.
Yeah.
And I'm not a millionaire. What am I supposed to do?" And the thing that in addition to other resources, a lot of local libraries will offer classes or even speaker series or activities too that the community could do. And then those are inexpensive options. If you are a reader, there are book clubs often assigned with your local libraries, but that can be another great place. And then also, if you are comfortable doing it, and again, this is a level of comfortableness, going to trivia nights. Now, most people would say, Amy, I can't be a trivia person without a group, but you could always call up there and ask if there's anybody that doesn't have enough people in their group. Because wouldn't that be great to join a trivia group for somebody? There's other people that are like you that might be a one or two off. And so if you
Yeah.
need a group of four, hey, you get put in there. And now there's four people that get to do trivia, let's say every Tuesday night.
I love it. I love it. Like, and you're reminding me, like, I'm pretty confident my daughter does trivia night with some of the other cross country coaches and track coaches. And even though she's there with that group pretty regularly, it's not like sometimes that one on one friend with you might keep you tucked away. But when you're with a group, you can attract other groups, right? Like you can be the fun group that other people are like, ooh, I'm going to talk to them when the game's over, or right, or whatever it is. And I want to almost follow up on what you just said because
Yeah,
every
please
time you
do.
say something, I'm like writing ideas down for myself. And so I hope other people are doing the same thing. But when you mentioned the library, totally can see the sign of our local library when they've done like a seed swap. So like
Yes.
I grow a lot of edible flowers, I grow a lot of heirloom vegetables, and I save my seeds at the end of summer and plant them again in the spring. But there's always hundreds and thousands more seeds than what you actually can even begin to think about planting. And so that seed swap would be an excellent place for me to just pack up the seeds that I have that I haven't used and go out there and meet other people that share a similar interest or at least a curiosity, right? With the seeds as the example. And then before I just stop talking again, I have to say, when you were talking about book clubs, I'm not sure this is an open invitation, but my local bookstore that I love to go shopping at, and I love to just grab a book and sit down on a chair or a bench and leaf through it before I decide if I'm going to buy it. They have a whole wall, and all of the local book clubs put the book that they're reading in that section. So there's a whole shelf of book club books, and it'll say the cottage whatever club, and it'll be that book that they're reading, and then it'll be the next book club and copies of the book that they're reading, so that local people can hop on into the bookstore and grab the book that their book club is reading, and they're buying it local. And it's I think this great partnership between a bookstore and a community that has lots of book clubs going on.
Yeah, I didn't even think of that, but that is an amazing idea. Like, I love that that bookstore does that for your local book clubs. And in addition, it also makes me think back about how I had mentioned the community college. I know the one in our area does a monthly book club, and that's always right at the very top of the list. But even that made me think too, of I've noticed kind of an influx, especially in bigger cities, but I've seen them in smaller cities as well, is stores or like centers, they're usually in some type of storefront that have board games to play. And I've even seen some restaurants start offering like a wall of board games. And then in the same kind of idea of trivia night, they do a board game night. So if
Yeah.
that is something that you're interested in, to even show up and join a team of different, board games is also an opportunity to meet new people that way is a little bit different.
It's different, and I feel like the pressure to have conversations is less because you're naturally talking to each other as you're playing the game, about what's happening, and I don't know, it takes away I just feel a lot of pressure if it's this one-on-one, like, I've gotta come up with conversation or questions to ask, but the game provides a lot of that, which is a great idea.
Yeah, and, I think too, anytime that you can engage in an activity that makes you feel a little less stressful, you're much more likely to show up as your authentic self. So then, because being our authentic selves often open up to feeling maybe criticized or people are seeing us, and that can be scary. And so we don't want to do it. And so we overthink that whole idea of, okay, I'm going into this new place and am I talking too much or am I talking not a little or I'm, talking too little or am I saying something that people don't want to hear or are people listening to me? Where if you're playing a game and you are talking about that game, you can get excited about something and then maybe you make a funny comment or maybe you're just not even thinking about things and people can get to know the real you a little bit more because you're not putting up those walls or those facades, overthinking who you should be versus who you are.
Yeah. 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 So we've talked about glass blowing, trivia nights, library activities, book clubs, community colleges, games at restaurants. I know a brewery near me in the winter when things are not as busy has like cornhole leagues. Much, like I don't know, when I was a kid, my mom did bowling league.
Yeah.
And, I guess even leagues are a thing to do. I'm going to throw out a couple of other things I have like just done it on my own. We have a local balsamic vinegar store that does cooking classes. And so I mentioned enough times that I was interested, but Amy, making a wish is not an actionable plan. That one year for Christmas, my son bought me a gift certificate to one of their cooking classes. So I just got to pick which class I wanted to go to. And it's funny that you used pasta in an example earlier because it was a pasta. We made gnocchi and I think something else at that cooking class. And I did go alone. And then they made us partner up. And there were only two of us that weren't there with a partner. So I was a partner with a man I had never met before at a cooking class. And no, we haven't talked to each other since then. But while we cooked together, I learned that he managed a restaurant that I've always been interested in going to. And so there was this pathway of having a conversation and asking questions. And then once I signed up for a cheese making class. So I discovered this place in a town nearby at the time it was called Gather. And they used this open space, studio space with tables in it to schedule local and not so local artists and creators to come in and lead classes. And so someone came up from another town and led this cheese making class. And I learned how to make mozzarella cheese and burrata cheese and then something they called farmer's cheese. And I was there and there were probably 10 to 12 other ladies there at the class. So we were just sort of all, engaging with each other. Anyway, one other thing I wanted to sort of put out there as an idea related to this, as I thought about where have I built friendships over the course of time outside of, so I'm going to put a pause on that for a quick second and write myself a note that I am talking about organizations to say that we may have said this in the past, but the reason that this is so pressing for us is because we've gone through phases of life where making friends seems easier or more natural, right? Because we were in school and we had classmates that we were with for a lot of hours every day. And so it was this group formed for us that made it easier to make friends. And then we graduated from high school and went into either a workplace or college, and we might have had roommates and people that we lived in near vicinity. And so that was another, kind of friends were put in place for us. We just had to decide who we fit with. Early careers, we're in workplaces, and often that's an easy place to maybe make some friends, right? Not always, but things happen. You change jobs, you move cities, and it becomes harder. And I was going to say we have kids, and all of a sudden, every practice we're sitting at and game we're going to, it's the same parents, and so we might start to do things socially with them. But now I think back to a professional organization is that final idea I think that you're going to get from me today, which is, I was invited by coworkers to join my professional organization for early childhood, and did that because I was like, oh, this is cool. Like, these people that I work with are inviting me to do this, and they're talking about some local activities that they do that I could get involved in. And there are people and this was 30 years ago, right? But there are people in my life right now that I met only because I joined that organization. And I may have met those people locally, but I may have met those people in the activities that I decided to participate in at the state level. Right. And so now I travel with people. I, this past week, had to go to a meeting hours away from my house. And one of those professional organization people knew I was going to that meeting, and she was too. She's like, hey, why don't you stay the night at my house? And that was super fun. And so I don't want to end this episode without saying, hey, how do you view yourself as a professional or even an affiliation that you kind of identify with? And could that be a place where you open yourself up a little and become a little vulnerable, and then have the result of building relationships that last for years and years and years and maybe forever?
I love that. I love that you brought that one up. And so it also does make me think then for the listeners, I talk a lot about hats. What hats do you wear? And who are you and who are kind of all or what are all the roles that make up who you are? And so maybe one of the things that we're talking about is also an untapped role that you step into often. And what I mean by that is maybe you're always a parent, or maybe you're always an employee of an organization, or maybe you're always, a child or adult child, something like that. But what are the hats that you don't wear all the time? And, so sometimes you are a lover of theater, or sometimes you are, someone who loves cooking, or and, kind of in the broadest way. And what might it look like to take a bigger step into that hat wearing or that role to meet other people that are like you in that way? So, we've talked about the theater and now, and specifically with your daughter, like getting to be with other people who also love the theater, which is kind of for her is a really good opportunity because I know she kind of leans more into her introverted side, but that is a fairly introverted activity. We put the extroverted bookends on it through our socialization, but it doesn't suck or drain her kind of bandwidth because for an hour and a half, 2 hours, 3 hours in the middle of it, she can be her introverted self and it's quiet. It's the love of those things. So I think also thinking about if you're sitting here going, oh my gosh, you're giving me all of these social activities. And I know by the end of the night, like I am going to be so drained. Yes. And
Mhm.
think about then some of those activities that might be less draining in a role that maybe you enjoy, but you don't go to often and merge that kind of place for you, for yourself.
Amy, I literally started a company to do that, right? Like like you sort of just described Cheryl, who led study abroad trips to Italy over and over and over again and just found that passion for being with the people who wanted to go there and learn there and thought, gosh, I'm doing this all the time. Why don't I do it instead of just for students? Why don't I do it for professionals? So, founded Cozy and Flourish and started taking professionals to Italy. And literally, tomorrow I have a meeting with someone from Sweden to talk about taking people to Sweden. But literally, I founded a company based around something I loved doing, and it's not just taking people on trips, it's hosting very creative, focused, retreat feeling conferences, right? And out of that, I can all of a sudden start naming people that maybe I knew, but I wasn't friends with. But now I'm really good friends with them because we shared this travel experience together. Yeah, maybe it's crazy that I literally started a company to be able to travel and make new friends, but it's working for me.
It absolutely is. Yeah.
It was one of those hats I wore, and I decided to really own it and make it my own and put my own mark on it and find people to do that with me, and brings me so much joy and so much energy from that. So I'm happy you said that.
Yeah, well, and it makes me think too then, so maybe as we're talking about our list, if you're feeling really brave, there are a ton of different travel agencies, yours being one with your, very specific kind of group, but there are those for other things as well. There are travel agencies where you get on a bus or you book a flight and you travel with strangers,
Yeah.
and you go and meet new people in that way. And maybe it's not something big and far away, but if you are interested in, going hiking, go hike,
Yeah.
or see if there's any groups of other people that go and hike, or
My sister-in-law does that.
does she? Okay.
Yeah, like, she literally started hiking when she moved to Arizona, and now is in at least 1, maybe 2 different hiking groups that hike every Saturday morning, and she loves it.
Is really cool. Yeah.
Perfect example. So, Amy, I have a thought or a posed question to our audience, but before I do that, do you have anything else you wanna say before I cut you off?
You did not cut me off. No, I think that this is a pretty good place to wrap up.
Okay. So I actually am feeling pretty energized. This conversation got me excited to think about those things that I love to do. And so I just want to put it out there to everybody. As you finish listening to this episode, what are the hats that you wear? What are the hats you wear often and you're really good at, but there might be other directions for them? Or things that you don't do as often, but you would love to do a little more? What are the hobbies, the creative activities, the interests that you have, the organizations that you might connect with? Start your own brainstorm. Take a pen, put it to paper, put it in the notes on your phone, wherever you do these things, but then let all of us benefit from it, because Amy said things today that sparked for me. And I would love to see in our comments, wherever you're listening, those ideas that you have for activities or places or organizations. And if you're like, I'm stuck, start reading what other people are posting. If you have a great experience, share the great experience. We definitely want to hear from you as we all think about and work towards new ideas for places we can go and things we can do to make new friends.
I agree. And so, with that, I will say thanks for tuning in to This Was Supposed to Be Easy. Remember, the best stories are the ones we live.
Join us next time as we uncover more tales and thoughts that just might change your world while we navigate those things that we didn't expect to be so hard.
Stay curious, stay connected, and keep wondering.